questions? The member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question's for the Premier. The speech from the throne of last Tuesday of this week, made no reference whatsoever to immediate job creation programs. And in fact, the basic industries of this province, and more importantly, the workers in those basic industries, the mill workers, the bush workers, the miners, the steel workers, are not even mentioned. Is this an oversight on the part of the Premier, or is this intentional, that these workers are not important enough to be addressed, and these industries are not important enough to be addressed in the speech from the throne?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, to the honourable critic at large, and may I welcome him back to the House and say what a pleasure it is to see him here. What did you do with the other two? Where are you hiding them? But let me say to the honourable member that the throne speech was not intended to address every issue in the province. It created broad thrusts, and my honourable colleague opposite will know that a number of the basic industries are involved in structural transformations into higher technology adaptations to productions and other matters. We're very cognizant of that. And this province, this government remains very supportive of those basic industries. But you could go through that list. Your name wasn't mentioned either, but that doesn't mean we don't care about you.
Supplementary?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Premier can be as flippant and condescending as he wants. We've seen a 65% increase in the layoffs in January and February of this year across this province. And how is his throne speech? How is it going to help the 1,500 workers, the steel workers in Sault Ste. Marie? How is it going to help the miners in Wawa? How is it going to help the workers here in Toronto who have been laid off or who are facing layoffs? Why haven't you dealt with that number one issue in this province in the speech from the throne?
I say, Mr. Speaker, to the honourable critic at large that he is reading without spectacles. Because he would be aware, if he wanted to be fair-minded about this situation, that employment is up somewhat, 180,000 over the last year, some 72,000. We have, I remind my honourable friend, the lowest unemployment rate in this country. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that that's good enough, and we are aspiring to even be better. But my honourable friend will realize that the economy is going through structural transformations. It's not going to be in the future the way it was in the past. I mean, you concentrated all your efforts on the past, knows what that can do to you. And that's why we have a forward-looking visionary program that will provide retraining and provide new opportunities for people that are unfortunately shunted aside in some of the transformations. And so I say to you that this government is even more aware of the problems than you are, and we are doing something about it.
Final supplementary, the member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Premier's unbelievable.
Supplementary,
Mr.
please.
Speaker, the Premier has referred to his high technology funds. He's talked in the speech from the throne about world-class technologies here in Ontario. He's talking about the year 2000. Is the Premier not aware that on April 12th of 1985, he said that the previous government was prepared to spend $1 billion of taxpayers' money with absolutely no job guarantees? It is the height of irresponsibility, and that's exactly what he's done.
Premier.
I stand by those remarks, Mr. Speaker. You see, this isn't a fund that will be applied to building marinas. It's not a reallocation of funds from other departments wrapped up in a fancy title like build. We don't have that kind of creative imagination that you have. This is specifically directed to enhance the productivity, the competitiveness of the economy of the province of Ontario, and I'm sure my fair-minded friend opposite, when he sees the results of this, will stand up in this House and say, thank the Lord that we had some creative leadership in this government.
Yeah.
New question.
So much for the unemployed.
Order.
So
New
much
question,
for the
the
layoffs.
member for Lincoln.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Mr. Speaker, the Premier is quoted today as saying that his government's Bill 94 is draconian and he criticizes his former friends in the New Democratic Party for being wanting to jam the bill down the doctor's throat. I think that's a direct quote from the Toronto Sun.
That's funny. It's your bill.
Will the Premier agree today to hoist Bill 94 and instruct his emissary, the honourable member, the Attorney General, to negotiate with the doctors fairly and reasonably?
Premier. Mr. Speaker, to the honourable member, we have been negotiating fairly and reasonably with the doctors. Discussions are ongoing, and we are searching for a negotiated settlement, if that is possible. You're aware of the difficulties, obviously, where I disagreed with my friends in the New Democratic Party. I think their approach, as I read about it, would have been to just jam the bill in without discussion, without trying to negotiate a settlement. Well, with great respect to my honourable colleague opposite, you're completely oblivious to the facts in this situation. The Honourable Minister has been conducting an ongoing series of meetings. It is our view that progress is being made. I can't guarantee you a resolution of this, but I can tell you, you have seen an example of real leadership on an issue, rather than running away, changing our position like you do all the time over there.
Supplementary, the member for Lincoln.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the positions are changing minute by minute. Mr. Speaker, let me ask the Premier, although the negotiations have been conducted in secret with the OMA, you, sir, continue to muse about possibilities and the content of the so-called 10-point program. Could you tell us now exactly what it is that you're negotiating with the OMA?
Premier.
The answer to your question is we are not discussing in public. The Honourable Minister has not discussed in public, and neither has anyone else has been part of those discussions what has been on the table. I told you then, and I'll tell you again, we are not going to discuss that, and I refer you even to your Honourable Leader, who has said on a number of occasions when he was negotiating with the doctors that he's not prepared to negotiate in this House, and he's not prepared to negotiate to public, because that's not constructive. If the OMA wants to tell you what was discussed, that's their prerogative, but I can tell my honourable friend I don't think it's constructive towards reaching a resolution to discuss those details in the House.
Final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, it's a little difficult to understand how the government, on the one hand, can declare that the legislation will be definitely passed, as it did in its throne speech, and yet, on the other hand, it continues to say that they'd prefer a negotiated settlement. Premier's comments, Mr. Speaker, I find quite trite. They're flip. I think the people of this province deserve some answers from you. Your comments have been misleading. They've been misleading to the members of this House. They've been misleading to the members of the Social Development Committee. They've been misleading to the OMA.
Order. Order. I would ask the order. 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 Would the honourable member withdraw those remarks misleading this House?
Mr. Speaker, my comments, if
Yes,
you wish
yes
to,
or no?
my comments were that
Yes or no?
the comments of the Premier were misleading. I did not indicate that the Premier had misled the House, sir.
Order. Order. Out. Order. 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 Would the member withdraw the comments misleading this House?
Mr. Speaker, in light of your interpretation of my comments, I will withdraw them.
Thank you.
I may proceed with my question.
The supplementary question.
My final supplementary to the Premier is this. Are you saying that if you can negotiate a settlement with the OMA that you'll amend the legislation and bring it back to the House for passage? Or are you saying that if the Attorney General is unsuccessful in his negotiations, that you're going to ram the legislation through? Which one is it?
Premier? Are you looking for a yes or no answer? My friend, let me tell you, the position of this government is we are going to end extra billing. As I've said before, there are many ways to do that. There are many details that can be negotiated. The Honourable Minister is in discussion on those matters, and we hope to reach some kind of an accommodation. Obviously, we are going to end extra billing. That is the answer to your question.
New question. New question, the member for York South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Premier, and it concerns the number of statements that have been made by him and by others about extra billing. I'd like to ask the Premier if he can explain what is draconian and what is undemocratic about meeting one's commitments to the public made not only during an election campaign, but also made in an accord signed with this party. What kind of democracy is it where the Premier of the province refuses to commit the government publicly to a timetable on a bill which has been discussed at great length in committee, at great length in this legislature, and which took the government 6 months to introduce? When are you finally going to introduce on third reading this bill so we can get on with the end of extra billing, Mr. Speaker?
Frankly, I say to my honourable friend with respect, frankly, I'm surprised at you. I am surprised at you. I'm surprised that you, who speak so much and have such great respect for the parliamentary process, who understands that this bill is in the hands of a committee, that there have been hearings on the matter, one who believes that people should be widely consulted, would not give a chance for that parliamentary process to operate. And I think even my friends opposite, even though they don't have anything worthwhile to say, should have an opportunity to contribute should they feel they want to. And that's why we are consulting widely. It's in the hands of the committee. It will be reported back to the House. Amendments will be made. As you know, you have an opportunity. The party opposite has an opportunity to contribute to those amendments. You see, I don't feel I am the dictator of this province. And sometimes when socialists have a little power, they do feel they are dictators.
Order. I think the question's been answered. Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the committee hearings were concluded with respect to hearings, and your party and the Tory party took that bill off the agenda of the committee. That's the parliamentary action which your party has taken with respect to extra billing. And those are the facts and matter. And if the Premier regards that as democracy in action, well, then that's his particular definition. I'd like to ask the Premier if he can tell us. Dr. Moran is quoted as saying yesterday that, and I quote, "We're willing to meet until the cows come home." That's the position that the OMA has taken, as well as rejecting the $53 million slush fund which you put forward as a solution to the problem. As well as rejecting that, they said, "We're willing to meet until the cows come home." I'd like to ask the Premier, are you going to go along with that approach of meeting until the cows go home while patients are being extra billed $1 million a week, over $40 million since the election on May the 2nd, 1985?
My honourable friend, if he read the throne speech, will understand that we took a number of initiatives with respect to the health of farm animals. And I think you will find that those cows will be coming home sooner under our administration than they would under other administrations.
Supplementary, the member for Lincoln.
Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, what amendments do you propose to Bill 94?
They will all be in the committee, and you'll have your opportunity to contribute in your very positive and constructive ways. We look forward to that.
Final supplementary, the member for Windsor Riverside.
Speaker, I'd like to ask the Premier, in view of the fact that your party, your government, started public hearings on a banning of extra billing last fall through the District Health Councils, of which the Ontario Medical Association refused to participate, and then we've had public hearings in the Social Development Committee. It's now been 6 months, and there's been $24 million of extra billing going on to which the patients will never recover in this province. Is the Premier prepared to tell the legislature today that when the bill is reported in about 2 weeks, they will call the bill immediately for third reading?
I say to my honourable friend that we must be satisfied that it is run through the parliamentary processes, that we've had full hearings. And I'm mindful of the point you make, and it's certainly not a bad point. But let me just draw a parallel for you. When we got into the discussion on the separate school issue, you'll recall the previous government did nothing for a year. There were no consultations, nothing happened. And we decided as a government that we should have full consultations as well as taken to the court. So our approach to that issue, and that's still not solved, and that's 2 years old at the moment, and we are hopefully close to a resolution. This is equally a difficult issue for a number of people. And I know there are simplistic views of the situation. I reiterate, we are committed to ending extra billing. But there are a variety of alternatives and ways to do this kind of thing. And we want to be satisfied that we have had a full hearing and people have had an opportunity to speak on this issue. And we do not want to shut off the democratic process. I can't give you a specific date, but I say to my friend,
New question.
I think the cows will be coming home
New
sooner
question.
rather than later.
New question, the member for York South.
Speaker, nothing more undemocratic and draconian than extra billing itself. I'd like to ask the Premier with respect to another issue which concerns a great many people in Northern Ontario. I'd like to ask the Premier why the government did not know sooner of the decision announced by Algoma Steel last week of the layoff of 1,500 workers, potentially in the Sioux and in the town of Wawa. Why it didn't know sooner, why that information was not taken by the government and then a plan developed in terms of alternatives, why the government is put in the position of simply putting out brush fires, and why the Committee of Deputy Ministers, which I understand has been appointed, has yet to contact the workers affected both in the Sioux and in Wawa. Can you explain why that's the case in Ontario today?
It will come as no surprise to my honourable friend that there have been troubles in the Sioux with Algoma for some period of time. You knew that, I knew that, and I think every member of this House knew that, particularly the members from the Sioux area. All has not been well in the steel industry. You have seen a downsizing in the number of people employed as it is going through a restructuring. None of this brings me any cheer or joy, but those are the realities. So we have been familiar with that. The honourable member will be aware that in our throne speech of 2 days ago, a number of specific thrusts were taken, and they will be amplified in the near future with respect to broadening the economic base of Northern Ontario. There is no question about that. We are sensitive to those problems and are working with them. There have been meetings with the company and others, and a number of initiatives are in mind now to try to to assist the community in this situation. It is troublesome. There is not an easy solution that I could put my finger on. I suspect you can't either.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Premier, since he himself mentioned the throne speech, if he can tell us why in the throne speech there was no mention of mining, no mention of steel, no mention of forestry, no mention of the basic industries in Northern Ontario, no mention of what prospects faced those workers faced with the kind of change that's there. And if you have that sense of reality with respect to the situation in 1986 facing the workers in Algoma, facing the workers in the Sioux, why was the throne speech so full, not of that reality and not of the need for specific measures, but of falderall about what may come in 2001 and 2005 in the high-tech future, which apparently leaves all these workers in the lurch?
I heard that speech from the critic at large from the Conservative Party. I just don't agree with that interpretation. I mean, you could have mentioned a lot of other we didn't mention the plastics industry either, so you could have said that we're neglecting them. I just don't think that's a fair interpretation of what we were doing. We're talking about technology as applies to these industries. We understand, as I'm sure the honourable member opposite does, the restructuring that's going on, and we are there to assist and to guarantee a future for these people that are, as I said, unfortunate byproduct of these transformations. We are working with retraining funds. The colleague has a number of plans for these people, but we've got to move with these new realities, and we are doing that. Obviously, it troubles us, but you can't pass a magic wand. This House can't pass any act that's going to change the situation in broad terms, and I think you understand that. That's why we are working with many people, including the member to your immediate left, to looking at alternatives to broaden the economic base of Northern Ontario, tourism, hydro, and a variety of others.
Supplementary, the member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Premier, we're talking about the most important issue facing this province today. We're talking about spiraling layoffs in virtually every basic industry in this province, and you have not recognized that priority in your throne speech. In Sudbury last year, you said you couldn't do anything to solve the unemployment problems of Sudbury. Are we going to see the same attitude from you now with respect to the Algoma Steel layoffs in Sault Ste. Marie, or with respect to the miners in Wawa, or with respect to the mill workers at Kimberly-Clark and Thunder Bay? Is that going to be your approach? You can't do anything. You haven't announced a direct job, immediate job creation program. When are you going to do it?
Kimberly-Clark is in Terrace Bay, for my honored friend's information. You know, some of the problems that we're facing today is because your government ignored them for the past 40 years. Let me tell you something. You're the guys that thought of things only in terms of the political optics in the short term. You think all this developed in the last 9 months? I can't believe you, even my honorable friend, the critic at large, would be intellectually dishonest enough to stand up and say these things developed in the last 9 months. We are now in the process of building a future for Northern Ontario, Southern Ontario, Eastern Ontario, the entire province. We see the future far clearer than you did. You only saw the future in terms of the next election, and look what happened to you.
Final supplementary. Final supplementary, the member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Premier, I beg to differ on your throne speech, but it presents a fairyland vision of a high-tech 21st century bearing no relationship to the economic realities facing Northern Ontario today. I think it's about time that your government recognized the unique problems of northern communities dependent on single industries. What specific action can the Premier announce today that will give the people of Sault Ste. Marie, Wawa, and other communities in the north assurance of economic growth and control over their economic future?
Premier.
Speaker, I talked to your honourable leader a few moments ago about some of the initiatives undertaken in the throne speech, and we're going to continue to do that with respect to the specific problems in Sault Ste. Marie and potentially in Wawa. There's a committee of deputy ministers who are meeting on that particular problem, but I'm mindful, as you say, of the problem of single industry towns right across the province. This is nothing new. Your honourable colleague from Sudbury East has been talking about this for the last 10 years. We are now in the process of addressing it, and I think when you see the full result of our initiatives, then you will stand up in this House and praise the government.
New question. The member for York Mills.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology. Mr. Minister, today you have demonstrated that you at least believe in the need to support small business through some of the initiatives that you've announced today. We are pleased that you have accepted totally the idea, the program, and the plan developed by the Ontario Chamber of Commerce for the network concept for small business, which will in fact be very helpful. That is a reasonable acceptance on your part. Mr. Minister, I wonder, given that obvious support for small business, whether you would today give us an absolute undertaking that you will oppose totally your government's plan to introduce a payroll tax on business to fund the healthcare system in this province.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm aware of no such plan, and if the minister has information on such, I would appreciate receiving it from her.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we shall be very glad to send him all of the news clippings of the expounded statements of the Premier of this province regarding this matter, and some of the documentation which is at hand as well. Mr. Speaker, it is intriguing that the minister has appointed a flexible wand to act as an antenna with the small business community.
So your supplementary
it's important, too, that that small flexible wand and the minister recognize the concern which has been expressed on a number of occasions by the small business group in this province, both in the Chamber of Commerce and the Canadian Federation of Small Business, of independent
Question,
business,
please.
which would demonstrate clearly that the burden...
Order. Would the honourable member place her supplementary question?
Speaker, I will be pleased to, and I will not accuse the minister of being intellectually dishonest which the Premier accused my colleague of doing, which I believe is unparliamentary, and you said nothing about it.
Would the honourable member place her supplementary question? It's question period.
I shall be pleased to, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. You are aware that they have grave concern about the cost of the payroll tax to small business, I am sure. Will you please ensure that that kind of activity will not become an integral part of the health care funding program in the province of Ontario, if you want to keep jobs in that important sector of business?
Good question. Minister?
Mr. Speaker, this minister and this government are very aware of how important small business is and how many jobs it creates to the economy. And I can assure you that with the interest that we take in small business, that anything that would be contrary to making them successful will be carefully examined.
New question or supplementary? New question, the member for Algoma.
Question of the Premier, Mr. Speaker. Since the Premier has acknowledged, despite the rosy picture painted in his throne speech, that there is an economic crisis in Northern Ontario, and since he has acknowledged as well that there's been a series of layoffs at Sault Ste. Marie and Wawa, the Algoma Steel operation, since 1982, will he respond to the unemployment rate that is already over 20% in that area, and tell us what specific government programs and initiatives his government is going to take that will deal with the direct job loss, permanent job loss of 1,500 more jobs, and the possible spin-off effects of up to 3,000 or 4,000 jobs affecting Algoma Central Railway, the lumber industry in the area, the tourist industry, and the whole...
Premier?
You tell the honourable member that Northern Ontario has never, ever had a more passionate or knowledgeable advocate than the honourable minister who's now responsible for but let me be fair. Let me be fair. There's a number of, I don't want to be unfair about this because there are a number of members in this House, and we've discussed these issues for many, many years, who have brought those concerns here eloquently. And I include you and many others when I make that remark. But I say to you that we have put aside in the last budget, you recall, $100 million in a Northern Development Fund, an unprecedented fund, sum of money. There is no one solution to the problem, as you know. There are a multiplicity of smaller ones. I can tell you we have launched the initiatives already. I can only repeat what I've said to your colleague who asked me roughly the same question, that we have undertaken that process, I think, with understanding and with commitment. I look forward to working with my colleague, as does the minister. I know you work closely on these matters, of making sure that those monies are allocated properly for the maximum impact in terms of employment in Northern Ontario. We have a lot of work to do in tourism, in hydro, in small business development, and many other areas, resource development, and others, that I think are going to be very constructive in the long term.
Supplementary. The member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Premier, I think it's clear that there is the need for greater public and governmental understanding of the economy of Northern Ontario and the consequences of decisions like this on cities such as Sault Ste. Marie when massive layoffs are announced. Now that you've had an opportunity to be briefed on the Sault crisis, will you support the call by our party that a legislative committee be empowered to conduct a comprehensive public inquiry into the actions of Algoma Steel and its implications on the economy of Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma District?
Premier?
I say to the honourable member, who's an economist, and am I correct in saying you work for Algoma? I'm sure you're in a position to stand up and tell some of your colleagues the reality of that situation. Perhaps even enhance their knowledge of the situation, the steel industry, and others. And I say to that. Now, to the honourable member, I, at the present time, don't think it's particularly constructive to have a committee into every company that has layoffs in this province at the present time. I'm not sure. You've already given them the benefit of your knowledge in the past, and look where they are today. So if you feel we can do something, if you feel there's something that's constructive that can be done, certainly we're amenable to any positive suggestion in that regard, but if your suggestion is every single time there's a layoff, we should have a committee of this House to try to second-guess the company or run it differently, I'm not persuaded that a committee of this House could run Algoma any better than it's being run at the present time.
Supplementary? Oh, new question, the member for Kent Elgin.
Supplementary.
Sorry, supplementary. The member.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. I say to the Premier that all of your hand-wringing isn't doing anybody in Sault Ste. Marie or anywhere else any good. We have an unemployment rate that's unacceptably high in the Sioux area. We have 4% of the population of that city on welfare. Apart from your navel-gazing about the year 2000, what is your government prepared to do now to assist that community?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, you phrased the question eloquently, but I think I've already answered it. And I responded to the honourable member, and you're not suggesting we pass a bill preventing those layoffs, are you? If you are, stand up and say so. But I haven't seen anything constructive out of your party on this issue in the last 40 years.
New question, the member for Kent Elgin.
My question is to the Minister of Revenue. Is the Minister aware that the Manitoba government has made it possible for farm users of diesel fuel to add dye to the fuel, and that is in order to identify the fuel as tax-exempt, at the U.S.-Canada border, thereby allowing farm diesel fuel users to take advantage of the 10 to 15% saving per purchased diesel fuel south of the border. As I'm sure the Minister is aware that diesel fuel prices have not fallen with the prices of other fuels in Ontario. And could the Treasurer investigate making a similar arrangement to benefit the farmer who is already suffering from high production costs and low commodity prices?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for the question, and I would also like to say that the government is anxious to do everything they can for farmers having to do with fuel prices and any other assistance that is possible. And I've asked the officials in the Ministry of Revenue to look at the alternative that the honourable member has put forward in his question, and we're anxious to keep fuel prices as low as possible.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister of Revenue. As was indicated by his colleague, there has not been a very close association between the downturn in gasoline prices and the diesel fuel, and of course that is the fuel where the coloring is added. While his ministry is looking at the whole issue of colored fuel, would he also at the same time speak to his colleague, the Minister of Energy, and his colleague, the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, and maybe look in himself as the Treasurer to see why there has not been a further pass-through in total cost of fuel, including colored fuel, and why does he not look at the dastardly Fuel Tax Act that is keeping the price of gasoline higher?
Right. Gouging, that's what you're doing. You're gouging.
Minister.
I was informed by the Minister of Energy, I believe Tuesday, day before yesterday, that the price of diesel fuel had begun to descend. We expect it to go down further. That we have no plans to review the motor vehicle fuel tax in the immediate future.
New question, the member for Sarnia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Industry, Trade, Technology, Small Business Advocate, and Pacific Rim Developer. My question is with respect to a speech that the Minister made some months ago in Washington, in which he made some comments reflecting on the issue of free trade and indicated, I think in a very direct sense, that he was very much in favor of some form of free trade agreement with the United States. That statement seems to run in direct contradiction to the statements made by your leader, the Premier, who has been very negative and convoluted in his statements on this same subject. And my question, Mr. Speaker, is what is your position on it? Are you, as the Minister of Northern Affairs, a passionate advocate of the free trade? What is the Premier's position? What is the government's position on this issue?
Minister.
Can you clarify where you stand?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My position is the same as the Premier, and that is that we have to approach this topic very cautiously and have answers before we consent totally to it.
This supplementary,
Mr. Speaker. This is probably the number one economic issue in this entire province. You can talk about expanding free trade to the Pacific Rim, and I want you to know that I endorse those efforts and I'm totally behind them.
But we started them, so why wouldn't you carry them out? You've picked up every good idea we've had.
Supplementary.
My question to the minister is, do you recognize, sir, that 90% of our trade goes to the United States, and if you want to secure markets into that particular jurisdiction, you had better send some clear signals as to where your government stands?
Mr. Speaker, I believe that those have been very strong, and they point out exactly how we feel about the subject.
New question. New question, the member for Port Arthur.
On the same subject of free trade, but I'd like to direct it to the Premier. Given that the Mulroney government has sacrificed foreign investment review, the National Energy Program, cruise missile testing, and low-cost generic drugs in its pursuit of fast-track negotiations with the United States, and given that your throne speech was absolutely silent on the subject, can the Premier categorically assure us that Ontario's lumber, steel, and auto jobs have not been sacrificed in the last round of wheeling and dealing in Washington? And if you are quoted correctly as saying, we must be very firm in our resolve not to give anything away, how can you support free trade negotiations led by Mr. Mulroney, who said last night you can be certain that there are going to be concessions?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member raises a very good question, and I can't stand in my place and give absolute assurance that no concessions or deals were made anywhere. I was not party to those discussions. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Whether there were special concessions, well, my friend, I think you'll notice that we have on many occasions. I do not know what transpired in the arm twisting that went on in the Senate committee in the United States between the administration, the President's office, and that particular committee in order to get that vote of yesterday, the 10-10 on the veto, which was a tie but construed as a victory. I don't know if any deals were made on lumber or steel or pharmaceuticals or anything else. I don't know if the Canadian officials have made any deals in that regard. But this government has stood firm in its protection of the consumers in Ontario and Canada with respect to the pharmaceutical situation. We have stood firm on the Auto Pact and a lot of other things. The concessions you ask about, they worry me as well. I don't know what they will be in the future. But I can assure you that this government will stay vigilant in the protection of Ontario's interests.
Supplementary, the member for Hamilton East.
Supplementary to the Premier. The Premier knows that Senator Packwood has said that there's not a fish that swims, a crop grown, or a widget made that's not to be subject to negotiations. And as well, all of the members of the Select Committee that were in Washington heard very clearly from the Americans that everything had to be on the table in the course of the trade talks. Why then, with some 550,000 Ontario jobs at stake, did the 5 Liberal members on that committee vote with the 4 Tory members to endorse the Mulroney initiative in the free trade talks? And can he the Premier tell us when he's going to get off the fence and tell us clearly where his party really stands so that we have some influence before we've sold this province down the river?
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I think you've been following this issue for a long time. You know where this government stands. Certainly the federal government knows where it stands, and a lot of other people have been discussing on the matter. With respect to the theoretical issue of having a discussion about enhanced access, we're prepared to listen to that. But let me tell you, it's this government, and no other government in this country who has stood firm on a number of important issues, that we have been well prepared for these discussions and will continue to be, and I assure my honourable friend that we will remain vigilant in the protection of those interests. I tell you, we're not going to let this country be steamrollered in these discussions. That's why we've been fighting for provincial participation. That's why you'll recall what happened at the Halifax conference and what's happened subsequent to that. Why we insist on a wide provincial role, that setting the mandate so that we don't walk into the kind of situations that the honourable member talks about. I can assure the honourable member that we will continue to play a national leadership role.
Supplementary. final supplementary, the member from Sarnia.
Supplementary to the Premier. Contrary to what the Premier might think, there are very few people in this province who knows his position, the government's position, or the Minister of Industry and Trade and Technology's position. When are you going to clarify where you really stand on this issue and stop playing this Pontius Pilate routine and washing your hands of all responsibility as you have been?
Premier?
My honorable friend, first of all, what's your position? I've seen at least 6 or 8 different positions from you guys. What's the federal position? What's the federal position? Of course, we're negotiating, and we haven't said we'd walk away from that, but I'll tell you, under certain terms and conditions, and you know as well what we said about the Auto Pact and a variety of others. So when my honorable friend stands up in a bluster, playing holier than thou, let me tell you, you guys would have rolled over on your back, and this country would be in bad shape.
New question. New question, the member for Eglinton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to direct a question to the Minister of Colleges and Universities. I'd ask the Minister to define for this House and for the province the meaning of the words knowledge workers as set out in the speech from the throne.
Minister?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't have a dictionary definition of the word knowledge workers. I think the member opposite is a person of some substantial intellect. He knows that what we're talking about in that context are workers who work in an information-based society that will depend on abilities to deal with the high-tech world that we're moving into. He knows that as well as I do.
Supplementary, the member for Eglinton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, perhaps we've seen an example of what a knowledgeable politician isn't. I'm not sure just now. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if I could ask a supplementary. Are we to imply from that definition set out by the minister that the rest of the workforce in Ontario could be defined as unknowledgeable or unknowledge workers?
Minister?
The answer, Mr. Speaker, is no.
Thank you.
New question, the member for Welland-Thorold.
In the absence of the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, I'd like to put a question to the Premier on gasoline prices, and say that given that the Canadian President, now Shell, has admitted that his company has been and is skimming off 2 or 3 cents a litre, savings on gasoline, which would otherwise be passed on to the consumers in this province due to the lower crude prices. And given that your own Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations said yesterday that he was very unhappy about the high gasoline and oil prices generally throughout much of Ontario, I wonder if you would tell us what intervention you've made or your minister has made with those oil companies to force prices down. What have you, as your minister, said to them verbally or in writing to tell them that the prices must be lowered?
This question's been asked.
I can't give you all the details of that, but the honorable minister's not here today, but I will inquire of him and ask him about his specific interventions. But I'm like you. I found that was an extraordinary statement of the president of Shell today, that he was pocketing 2 or 3 cents a litre, and you can rest assured they'll be looking at this.
Supplementary, the member for Welland-Thorold.
Well, when you're giving some thought to the actions you've taken, you obviously haven't given any so far, will you recall that the present Treasurer, when he was Leader of the Opposition 11 years ago, proposed legislation to provide ongoing power for the Government of Ontario to control gasoline prices at a reasonable level? Premier, why don't you now dry your crocodile tears and do exactly what your Treasurer previously proposed, and show you are prepared to protect consumers with something more than just rhetoric? Premier?
Mr. Speaker, the Treasurer doesn't even remember it if he tells these changes. I wasn't born when the Honorable Treasurer was elected to this House, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not familiar with all of the things he's said over the last years, but I can tell you I found him always to be wise and far-seeing in the things that he said. And so many of the things that he said in the past years are coming back to be true. I'm not aware of that specific quote 11 years ago. We should perhaps look into it, but you'll be very well aware that the federal government controls this issue, not us.
Final supplementary, the member for Durham West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Premier in the way of supplementary. As he well knows, it was the Gasoline Tax Act amendments by your treasurer, supported by this party to our left, or supposedly the consumer-oriented party, that is causing gasoline prices right now to be 2 to 3 cents higher than they should be.
That's right.
We told you it was going to happen. What are you going to do, Mr. Premier, to pass some relief onto the consumers of this province that you two parties perpetrated?
This party is just very grateful to have support wherever it can find it, and we are grateful for the wisdom of the New Democratic Party on this particular issue. I can say to you that you're a party that believes in fiscal responsibility. I assume you'll notice that we brought the net cash requirements down. A certain amount of money has to be raised to finance roads and hospitals and schools, northern development, all the things that your friends on the front row are asking about today. And I am sure when you look at the even-handed and fair-minded way that we extract tax dollars in this province, you would agree it's a fair system.
New question, the member for Sudbury.
Being intellectually dishonest.
Lots of room. Mr. Speaker, a question for the Minister of Housing. Low-cost rental apartments are disappearing at an alarming rate in Toronto. What are you going to do about it?
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to remind the honourable member that the assured housing policy addressed that, what we're going to do about it. And also, if you're making reference to any of those stocks that we are losing by demolition or conversion, you know that we are addressing that matter seriously, and we'll be introducing the House shortly. Supplementary?
Well, Minister, there's a lot of fear in the hearts of tenants in Toronto, especially when they see their friends, their relatives, some of their parents being evicted from low-cost rental housing, because that low-cost rental housing is going to be made into luxury housing. What we need is affordable housing, not more luxury housing. How do you explain your failure to do anything about renovations in this city?
Minister? I'm surprised, Mr. Speaker, that the member feels that we're not doing anything about it. There's no secret to it at all. As a matter of fact, as I said shortly, you will see what we'll be doing about addressing losing those affordable rental stocks. New question, the member for Scarborough West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Community and Social Services. Mr. Minister, there are many amusing things in the throne speech, words like knowledge workers and things like that, which we can all now drop into our world-class jargon. But one thing that was very disappointing was the absence of any promises on daycare, except for some more spaces. What happened to the great white paper on daycare you prepared and taken to cabinet committees several times, I hear? Why was there no mention of that in the throne speech? Did the cabinet gag on the financial implications, or is this a backing off of your commitment to children and working parents and the commitment you made to us in the Accord of a move away from welfare-based daycare? Were you as well mugged in the halls of power?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the reference to daycare in the throne speech clearly identified two needs. One, for more spaces, yes, but it didn't stop there. It also made a reference to economic equity and clearly indicated that the problems of accessibility and affordability and fair wages for daycare workers are part of that economic equity. And so what we're clearly saying in that very short but very pungent statement is that those key issues with respect to daycare are all being addressed in the paper that the member knows is well on its way.
Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, it was an interesting shorthand, and pungent perhaps is a good adjective for it. I didn't realize that was what you thought of it. But does this mean, Mr. Minister, that you are going to make some kind of announcement in this session around daycare and a major policy statement? And are you going to talk about some direct subsidy to those daycare operations in this province, some of which are now in danger of closing if the indirect subsidy from the federal government ends, as it's supposed to.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the reference to the daycare paper indicates that, in fact, it is on its way. It is going through the process. A statement will be made before this session is over. I cannot indicate to the member the specific detail to a direct payment. That may or may not be part of it. The member knows that that is a serious consideration. The member also knows that with respect to the indirect payments that some of the municipalities are experiencing at the present time, that we have indicated to each and every one of them that we will carry that until the end of this year, which is a year longer than the previous government had been willing to do. So I think we're clearly taking those factors into consideration.
Final supplementary, the member for York Centre.
Would the Honourable Minister admit to this House that he has lost the battle in trying to do something for daycare, inasmuch as it was just an addendum to the throne speech? Would you not admit to this House now that you have failed to convince the rest of Cabinet on the great need for daycare?
Yeah. Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I will make no such admission because it is factually untrue.
Hear, hear. New question.
Minister of Agriculture. Farmers in other provinces are getting financial assistance to get their spring crops in the ground. Why have you purposely delayed payments to the beef farmers of Ontario for their stabilization payment?
Minister?
We have not purposely delayed payments to the beef farmers. It's taken some time to get the information that was needed, all the documentation that was required in order to make a stabilization payment. The committee, which is a national tripart stabilization committee, have had some differences over how payments should be made, whether it should be on a per head basis or whether it should be on a pounds of gain basis. So it's just been recently that they've come to the decision that the payment will be made on a per head basis this year, but the committee is still sitting to make a determination as to how they're going to make the payment in 1987. Some of these programs that you see other provinces offering are loan programs which really don't put as much money into the hands of the farmers as our offer program did. The $2 billion Alberta program means $4,000 to a farmer. Our offer program put as much as $14,000 into the hands of the farmer.
Hear, hear.
Let me talk about our programs if I have the time.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Put your hand around here.
Alberta has created $880 million dollars of new programs since you've been in office. That doesn't include the program you're talking about in Alberta. Will the minister guarantee that the farmers that are in financial trouble in Ontario, the beef farmers in financial trouble, will be given a 3-week emergency turnaround to get money out into their hands so they can get some cash to get their crops in the ground?
Minister?
We're looking at a number of programs, not only to help the beef farmer, but the corn producer. Some of these other people that are having difficulty in arranging operating credit and getting money so they can buy their seed and fertilizer and what have you. We are rendering support to these people by, for instance, the corn producers saying that we support their interim payment under stabilization. We're working on these programs. All I say to the honourable member is there's a lot more to come. Stay tuned.
That's right. That's right. New question. Order. New question, the member for Oakwood.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Housing. And it is in regards to the disappearance of affordable housing units in Metropolitan Toronto and the province as a whole. In view of the fact that early next week, I understand the Minister is going to be making a statement as a result of the major plank in the NDP Accord in terms of conversions, demolitions, renovations, and co-ownership schemes that are being used right now by speculators who gobble up this affordable housing and increase rents by 200 and 300% in the city of Toronto. Will the minister tell us, and tell in particular the people in the riding of Oakwood, the apartment, the tenants on Vaughan Road,
who are fighting eviction notice and who have received eviction notices, what kind of hope is there that in a month or 2 months they will be able to live in their affordable homes instead of finding themselves on the street or perhaps in an hostel?
Order, Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to tell the honourable member, not only in Oakwood that we're concerned about the loss of affordable rental stock, but all over Ontario. And we will be, as I can tell you, that we are still committed in protecting those rental stock that are being lost through demolition, conversion, or all the other stuff that you said.
Supplementary?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I sure hope that the minister stopped talking about being committed to protect affordable housing and act. I'm telling you that 150...
By way of question, I hope.
Yes. I'm saying to the minister, and the minister knows, that 150 tenants are going to be losing their apartments in a month. What are you going to do right now? In a month, they will be on the street, and they cannot afford to be anywhere else.
You came to the question period.
Again, Mr. Speaker, I could again remind the honourable member, have I ever let you down? We promised, Mr. Speaker, to introduce a comprehensive housing policy. We promised, Mr. Speaker, to reduce the rent review from 6 to 4. We promised, all of those what we have promised, we have come through with it. We have also stated, and he said in the accord, but we campaigned on that, Mr. Speaker, that we are very mindful of the fact that we lose our rental stock through those type of conversion or demolition, and we will come through. Just wait and see.
Supplementary? Final supplementary.
Final supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Well, if the tenants in Ontario are to believe what the minister's saying today, he said they promised that they would give them lower rents. How is it that you're saying it's historic now that you're going to jack up the rents, give the money to the developers, and just leave them in the lurch?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I may have to remind my honourable friend again that when the Premier gave me this illustrious job as Minister of Housing, I thought there were people I could consult with. They weren't speaking to any Minister of Housing at that time. They didn't know them. I have been consulting with tenants and landlords, and we have come up, as you have said, with, as you've seen, they presented to me a report of many recommendations, which we're reading, and I tell you, they make very interesting reading. And they are now talking, and we bring a policy forth that will address all those concerns that you are so concerned about just now, when you should have been concerned about it 15 years ago and do something about it. We are doing something about it now, Mr. Speaker.
Good question. The member for Carleton Grenville.
Yes, I have a question to the Solicitor General. Mr. Minister, the Ontario Humane Society has been seeking funding from your ministry for over 3 months, and you have failed to respond to their need. The last meeting with them, I understand, was with your Deputy Minister in January. Due to your procrastination, Mr. Minister, the Humane Society has now withdrawn the services of 2 inspectors and 54 agents across this province. What are you going to do to see that there is proper protection against cruelty to animals in our province?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are certainly well aware of the concern of the Ontario Humane Society with regard to funding, and it has been under very active review despite some of the statements may have made to the media that we had cut back on funding and that we had not been in concert and consultation with them. We have been. A letter has gone back to them, and we are acting on the issue to try and be sure that if the funding is there, which, by the way, they have never yet asked for this year. It is a grant in which you apply for it, and they've never yet applied. It's there, and they've been told so in a letter to have it, plus the potential for the increase.
Supplementary.
Well, Mr. Minister, you better talk to the Ontario Humane Society, because they certainly don't believe that they have not applied for such a grant or for such help. In fact, I think every member in this legislature is receiving letters from people across this province who understand that the Humane Society have asked for this
Supplementary.
grant. I was talking to the president this morning of the Humane Society, and he believes that he's applied. So I'd ask you, Mr. Minister, to take one step and perhaps even give the president a call for a change.
Minister? The record will show that no such request has been made, but we certainly are aware of the desire of them to have money, and they have been negotiated with and talked to in the very last week. Sure.
Time for all questions has expired.